It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.
It was a day of infamy. Operation Jeffrey Epstein is not going well. A sneak attack in Ramadan. Murdered in cold blood the 86-year-old leader of Shia Islam, igniting religious fervor and jihad right across the world. The fact that his son-in-law, daughter-in-law, grandson and granddaughter were also slain hasn't even been mentioned in the mainstream Western media. Quickly followed by the massacre of more than 160 schoolgirls in an elementary school. That's scarcely been mentioned either. Followed by 40 female volleyball players being slaughtered in a single airstrike by Israeli and American forces. To date, no Hollywood celebrity has been pictured cutting her hair in anguish and in solidarity. If you want the war news, if you want it straight, if you want to know what's happening and what's going to happen next, you've come to the right place. It's the mother of all talk shows. Stay tuned. It is the biggest single American atrocity since the Vietnam War. The massacre of 167 girls aged between 7 and 12 in their classrooms in an elementary school close to the Straits of Hormuz in an obscure and far-off part of Iran. For no reason that anyone can possibly fathom, all these children were massacred. All of them. Every single child in 5 of the classrooms was massacred. 60 others are wounded in hospital, many of them critical. Later in that first day of the war, 40 volleyball players, 3 squads of volleyball players, all female, were massacred in a single airstrike. I'm probably telling you that piece of news for the first time. But it's quite possible that you don't even know about the slaughter of the schoolgirls. It is the biggest single slaughter of girls in the recorded history of the world, yet no one is talking about it. I don't want to labor this point, but just ponder for a second. If Russia had killed 167 Ukrainian schoolgirls, if Palestinians had killed 167 Israeli schoolgirls, if Iran had killed 167 schoolgirls, this would be the biggest journalistic story in the world and for years to come. It has died just as surely as the schoolgirls and the volleyball players have died. It was a sneak attack. It was in the middle of negotiations when a date had been set for tomorrow in Vienna, when the Iranian foreign minister was to travel to meet with Trump's son-in-law and his estate agent friend Steve Witkoff, two ingenues who know nothing whatsoever about the Muslim world, nothing whatsoever about diplomacy, nothing whatsoever about military matters, yet have inexplicably been made the chief negotiators of Donald J. Trump. The negotiations were set to continue on Monday, but on Saturday, what will forever be known as the Epstein War was launched. I don't know what's in the dump that's coming out tomorrow from the Department of Justice in Washington, but it must be pretty horrific. Trump will claim that the Israelis jumped the gun and forced him into the war, but that's a lie like every other lie he tells. It now turns out, according to Israeli media, that this date was set 2 months ago, and it was set to coincide with the religious festival of Purim, and it was all about dealing a death blow to the Amaleks. It is an infamy that a head of state was assassinated in cold blood in his own house. It is flatly illegal under American law, never mind international law. Trump could and should be prosecuted for it. The missile, by the way, that killed all these schoolgirls was fired from the deck, a cruise missile, fired from the deck of the USS Abraham Lincoln, which may or may not be limping somewhere in the Persian Gulf. The Iranians say they hit it with 4 ballistic missiles, which would be a just reward for the massacre of the schoolgirls. The Americans say that the missile never hit the ship at all, but plenty of other things have been hit. Hundreds of Iranians have been killed. Tens of Israelis have been killed. Maybe more, but strict censorship in Israel makes it impossible to know the extent of the damage and definitely the extent of the casualties. One thing is clear. The head of the Israeli Air Force has been assassinated by an Iranian rocket, which devastated a meeting of military officers, Air Force officers principally. The head of the Israeli Air Force was the man who massacred tens, scores of thousands of Palestinians in Gaza over the last 2 years. I don't know where he's destined for. God decides that. But I'll be surprised if he's not already burning in the hellfires. The other American targets that have been hit, you only know about if you're following me on social media, as many hundreds of thousands are doing, millions in fact. Many millions of people have followed my coverage of the war on all platforms on social media. But if you're watching the BBC lie machine, if you're watching the hysterical Zionist and American propaganda on CBS or on CNN, you probably don't know about the American officers who were killed in a hotel in Dubai. You probably don't know about the American casualties in Bahrain, as base after base after base of the American war machine was obliterated. And usually the officers, at least if not the enlisted men, had decamped to nearby quarters, renting out entire hotels, thinking that the Iranians did not know that they were there. The hell that is Tel Aviv this evening, and it's only going to get more hellish yet, is invisible to most mainstream media viewers. Israel makes it a punishable offense by 5 years in prison for publishing video or stills of damage done by Iranian missiles. That's what you do when you're a democracy. The social media, however, has ample footage of ballistic missiles, hypersonic missiles, and drones smashing into Haifa, Tel Aviv, and many other parts of occupied Palestine. The truth is, in the fog of war, it's difficult to discern who's telling the truth and who's telling lies. There's no doubt that falsehoods have been told by both sides in this conflict. It was denied that the Ayatollah Khamenei had been killed, when in fact he was the first man to be killed. You can understand the operational need to put their Plan B into operation, but it was a falsehood nonetheless. It was a falsehood that the Americans did not sustain any other than 3 dead service personnel and 6 severely wounded. The Iranians say it's 500 or 600 more than that. Who did and did not kill who and destroy what will become clear in due course. But a measure of how badly the war is going is that by Saturday evening, that is to say, on the first day of the war, Trump reached out to the Italian government to ask them to mediate a ceasefire. It took 12 days last year, for the Americans to persuade the Israelis that the game was up. It didn't even take 12 hours this time. It is clear that the Americans want an off-ramp. Trump has said repeatedly to The Atlantic and other publications that the Iranians want to talk. I'm ready to talk to them. We need to talk. We will be talking. This after a war that he launched, he said, to change the Iranian regime. A regime change operation, again, illegal under both domestic and international law. Well, they sure haven't changed the regime. They may have changed the 86-year-old man who was martyred, who was the supreme leader of Iran, but guess what? They're quite likely to get his son as the new Grand Ayatollah, the new supreme leader of Iran. Even if it isn't his son, it's his brothers, religiously speaking. It's his comrades in arms, in military parlance. The regime has not changed in Iran. They said they wanted the Iranian people to rise up and come onto the streets. Well, they did come onto the streets in their millions in support of the Iranian government, in support of the new Iranian government, and in condolence for the slain leader Ayatollah Khamenei. It isn't going well. It isn't going well for the Israelis. Their prime minister fled the country. He circled the Aegean. He circled the Mediterranean for 4 hours in his private jet and then took refuge. Where else? In Germany. The irony of that will not be lost for people of my age and class. The people, the Germans, who tried their best to extirpate every living Jew on the planet until the Soviet Red Army liberated them from their camps. The German people, who with their allies in Ukraine, in Hungary, in Romania, and other places, killed 6 million Jews. Where did Netanyahu sit out the first days of the war? Where else but Germany? Well, the Ayatollah Khamenei did not run away. He didn't even go into a bunker. He sat there and accepted his fate, which martyrdom has set the Muslim world on fire. In India, in Pakistan, and many other parts of the globe, millions of Muslims are protesting in outrage at this crime against Islam, crime against humanity, war crime, and a crime which is not yet finished. It was a crime, but as Talleyrand said on the murder of a political opponent of his, it's worse than a crime. It's a blunder. We'll be talking to Seyed Professor Mohammad Marandi in just 1 minute to find out from the front line how things lie on the first evening of the Epstein War. Stay tuned.
Hello, George. I heard Neil Kinnock commenting on you losing your seat, okay? I was disgusted and amazed at what he said. He was like an ignorant football supporter. He actually punched his fist in the air, saying he was delighted that you were gone, that you were a horrible person. That's the first thing he said. When he was leader of the Labour Party, he was conniving morning, noon and night to kick you out of the party. Now, this is before Tony Blair, and you were in good standing with the Labour Party. Mr. Kinnock, that chap just totally disgusted me. So what I think the British have to do, and the Irish and everybody else, is they need a new conversation and stop drinking Coca-Cola and Pepsi. And I think all those people in British civil society, including Jeremy Corbyn, Diane Abbott, Ken Livingstone, and very many more, have to have a conversation about how to wean the British and everybody else away from these Coca-Cola and Pepsi parties.
Nobody knows who Neil Kinnock is. Those who know who he is know he's the man from the Welsh Valleys that betrayed the miners. Frankly, the hatred of Neil Kinnock I wear not even as a badge of honour, a little tiny pin maybe, because pretty soon no one will have heard of him at all. But the wider subject that you raise is the important one. I don't know, Jeremy says he doesn't want to form a party. That's fine by me. I've got my own party. I'll be staying in it anyway. But what I would like him to do is to announce a new popular front, like the one that has just, I can tell you officially, won the French parliamentary elections.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
War news is coming into me in my ear as I speak, and we'll keep you updated. But the poll this evening: should Israel open its nuclear weapons to international inspectors? What? Israel's got nuclear weapons? Why aren't they in the Non-Proliferation Treaty? Why is the IAEA not inspecting Israel's nuclear weapons? Why does nobody ever talk about nuclear weapons? Does it not strike anyone as utterly extraordinary that a war is being waged by two nuclear weapon powers against a country that has no nuclear weapons, has declared it will never build a nuclear weapon, is religiously obligated not to build a nuclear weapon? Does that not surprise anyone? Well, Israel has hundreds of nuclear weapons and, according to the Washington Post, threatened to use them against Iran if Donald Trump did not join them in the war they're currently waging on Iran. Nuclear blackmail, I think we can call that. But back to the poll. Should Israel open its nuclear weapons to international inspections? Yes or no? You can vote on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway, on my X, on the YouTube community poll, on the YouTube stream. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and give a thumbs up to the show. Please do that before the night is done. And if you are one of the avant-garde who support the show through patreon.com/George Galloway, there's a ballot box there. It's the biggest poll we have ever had. 46,254 people have voted, and I'm only just announcing it. Well, the results are, well, shall I say, overwhelming, although I'd be interested to know who the 6% on the YouTube community poll who don't think Israel should open its nuclear weapons to international inspectors actually are. Are they in the Negev? Are they these Hasbara Israeli warriors? I mean, first of all, you're conceding that Israel does have nuclear weapons by your no vote, and yet you're saying Iran, presumably you're saying Iran should be bombarded because it doesn't have nuclear weapons. Well, if you want to call the show, it's toll-free in the US and Canada, +1 844 944 3344. It's free of charge in Britain and Ireland, 0808 196 5522, and the international number is 0044 203 966 2625. Mohammed in Nigeria presumably dialed that number because he's on the line to talk about Iran. Mohammed, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. George. Can you hear me clearly?
Very clearly. Go ahead.
Thank you. I have a special message to the whole world. I'm saying since the United States of America and Israel have carried out an illegal attack to the Iran, then Iran has every right to defend itself and retaliate heavily.
Well, the thing about it, Mohammed, is that this word illegal is null and void. There is no law. We are now living the law of the jungle. And the garden of the European Union is completely on side with it, having denounced the rest of the world, including Nigeria, as the non-garden, as the weeds, the undergrowth. Trump has bombed Nigeria. He's bombed Somalia. He has bombed Palestine. He has bombed Lebanon. He has bombed Syria. He has bombed Iran. I momentarily forget just how many countries he's bombed so far in the last 12 months, because that's as long as he's been in. It's 9 countries that he has bombed. So when you've got lawlessness on that scale, I mean, it makes Tombstone look like the village green. This is the Wild West, and it is the West that is wild. It is the West that is the rogue states, and the people they are bombing are merely trying to have a policy of development policy and independent foreign policy, as is their right under international law. So law is null and void, Mohammed. Last word to you.
Yeah, I say he's bombing these countries because they lack nuclear weapon. But he's not bombing North Korea because they have nuclear weapon. And my message to the whole world is that we must stand against the tyrants of the modern world from the cradle to the grave. Because if we don't do that, our grandchildren will not forgive us.
I mean, North Korea's nuclear posture now looks more sensible than ever. It now looks like the policy which any country which can produce nuclear weapons surely now will, because there are no aircraft carriers off the coast of North Korea. North Korea is not being threatened with invasion in any way because they know not only that North Korea has these weapons, but would not be afraid to use them. If the Yankees sailed the Abraham Lincoln anywhere near North Korea, it would be sunk. PDQ, Mohammed in Nigeria, thanks. Melvin, our good friend from New York. Welcome, Melvin.
Always nice to talk to you, George, even on a day like today. So nice to hear from you again. I got three main things here. The first one is I think that this will become a very long war. And one of the reasons is, and I believe that Iran should actually be able to do this, is that in the 2005, they split their leadership up into 12 different areas that were independent to protect themselves. The second thing of this is, and I will actually go with this, is what is Russia and what is China going to do about this? Because no one really has anything other than they say they support them. And this is, are they going to take a financial hit? Because they are financially surrounded or connected to Iran. The third thing that I'm going to make as a suggestion, or as my point with this is, because I do support Iran and I always have, is that a lot of this has dealt with meddling all the way back to the 20th century or the early days with the Shah. And it is literally just because we don't have puppets in that we particularly would like, because we used to be friends with Iran all the way back in the day. And it wasn't until the people revolted because of what they wanted. And it should be what the people wanted. That's all I have to say.
Well, you say it's all you have to say, but it is the whole case. First of all, I'd like to mention that there are 1 million Christians with hundreds of churches in the Islamic Republic of Iran. I've been in many of them. There are 100 synagogues in the Islamic Republic of Iran. I've been to them. The Muslim population of Iran is entirely accepting of the presence of these faiths and of their places of worship, and they are cherished and protected by the population and by the state. Secondly, the point you make is the bull point. They say that they are doing this for democracy, but Iran had a democracy. In 1953, the year before I was born, the democratically elected Prime Minister of Iran was overthrown by the United States and the United Kingdom. Dr. Mossadegh had committed the cardinal sin of telling British Petroleum that he was going to take Iran's oil and gas resources into the ownership of the Iranian people. He was going to nationalize Iran's oil. It would no longer be British petroleum in somebody else's country. It would be Iranian petroleum. And so they mounted a coup and overthrew him. They murdered, they executed his foreign minister, whose widow became a close friend of mine in London in her later years. We used to meet for tea in Harrods. Her husband was executed by the restored so-called Shah of Persia that the British and Americans installed so that they could rape Iran of its natural resources, leaving a bit for him to build a golden peacock throne and employ the biggest army in the region and the biggest gang of torturers in the region called Savak, and they literally murdered and tortured their way through any and all opposition. So there never would have been an Islamic Republic of Iran. There might well have been a pro-American democratic government in Iran. but democracy was murdered by us, not by the Ayatollahs, the mullahs, or the Islamic Revolution. It was murdered by us. Your question about Russia and China, I can't answer. I don't know. I know that prior to the hostilities, both Russia and China were doing their very best to beef up Iran's defenses, its military capability. I know that both Russia and China, unlike any Western country, any one, not one, has denounced this illegal act, this criminal act, this insane act. Not one Western leader has denounced the murder of a head of state. I mean, they captured the president of Venezuela only a few weeks ago, and now they've murdered the head of state of Iran. Talk about rogue states. They have the gall to call other people rogue states. They have the gall to say that there's a rules-based international order. Seriously? Are you kidding? They're not. Now look, I know that you, Melvin, and everybody else is waiting for the master. Seyed Professor Mohammad Marandi, from an undisclosed location, of course, but on the front line, here to tell us how it looks now from the Iranian point of view. Professor, thanks for joining us. I won't waste time with pleasantries except to say how happy we all are to see you alive and well, and we ask God to protect you in the days, weeks, and maybe months to come. I described yesterday as a day of infamy. I evaluated that it is not going well for the criminal regimes in Tel Aviv and Washington. What would you like to say to both those points?
You're absolutely correct, George. It is absolutely disgusting to see that the entire Western camp is supporting aggression. But this isn't new. When the first time round, the Israeli regime and the United States conspired to attack Iran 8-9 months ago, the West, the entire Western camp, supported them back then as well. And in fact, the German chancellor said that the Israelis do their dirty work for them. And now the German chancellor says that Iran does not have a legitimate government. So this is the sort of behavior you get from the West. They murder Iranians, they slaughter Iranians. Today, 2 hospitals were struck, one in the city of Ahvaz and one in Tehran, the Gandhi hospital, which is somewhat ironic, taking into account the position that the Indian government has taken with regards to the Israeli regime. So today we've had 2 hospitals struck. Yesterday morning, as I'm sure you know, in the small city of Minab, 165 people were massacred, mostly children, the rest their teachers, girls at an elementary school. So 165 elementary school girls were massacred, along with a few of their teachers. And yet there is nothing in the Western media about this and the condemnation of the regime in Washington or the regime in Tel Aviv. Yesterday, we also had a bombing of a gymnasium. And there we had a large number of girls who were playing volleyball, who were also massacred. Apparently, the Epstein regimes, which rape and murder girls, bomb them too when it comes to Iran. Yet the West fully supports them. So women's rights, human rights, all of that is just nonsense. As you were saying earlier, it's the law of the jungle. And what is even perhaps more disgusting is that the regimes in our region who just heard a few days ago the U.S. ambassador to the Israeli regime say that if the Israelis took the entire Middle East, he'd be fine with it, and that is definitely in unofficial U.S. foreign policy and European foreign policy. Despite that, Turkey, under Erdogan, is allowing AWACS jets to fly over Turkey to gather information about Iran. It's allowing U.S. bases in Turkey to use their radar systems to help the Israelis both offensively and defensively. And the countries in the Persian Gulf region are all hosting U.S. bases that are actively and have actively been used against Iran. So these regimes, which are more threatened by the Israelis than the Iranians, they are directing their antagonism towards Iran in support of the Israeli regime and Trump. This is the region that we live in. This is the world that we live in.
It's ironic in more ways than one, because Mr. Gandhi famously said, when asked by an American journalist what he thought of Western civilization, he paused and then replied, "Yes, I think that's a very good idea." And it's, of course, par for the course. Israel was bombing hospitals in Gaza virtually every day for more than 2 years and killing children in huge numbers, in thousands, maybe tens of thousands of children. In fact, certainly tens of thousands of children. So what's 165 little schoolgirls whose feet couldn't even touch the floor when they were sitting on their school chairs at their desks, now annihilated, eviscerated, incinerated by a high-powered weapon? I want to ask you, whose weapon was it? It makes no material difference, because these two criminals are acting jointly and are therefore jointly responsible for what each of them does. But I hear a story that these little girls were murdered by a cruise missile fired from the deck of the Abraham Lincoln. What's your take on that?
These girls were most probably, from my understanding, murdered by the Americans. And of course, Western media says nothing about it. There's no condemnation. There's no sympathy. So when it comes to fabricating numbers about dead riot people who died in riots at the hands of the rioters, in order to demonize Iran, when there's no internet in the country there was no internet back then, but they were inflating numbers by the day, all of the Western media is all in. But when it comes to children, little kids that we can see, reporters were taken there. They witnessed, they saw their bodies. When it comes to that, they're completely indifferent. And that is because the entire Western media is captured by the Epstein class. It is the oligarchs who own them. It doesn't matter if they're liberal or if they're conservative. We saw during the State of the Union in the United States, the only time that the Democrats and the Republicans applauded together, and apparently, since I didn't watch it, gave a standing ovation, was when Trump was talking about Iran. So on everything else, they have nothing to agree upon. But when it comes to antagonizing Iran, and when it comes to murdering Iranian leaders and murdering Iranian people as we speak, they're all in. They're all on the same page. It's the Epstein class.
Now, I mentioned the Abraham Lincoln. The Iranian side say they struck it with 4 ballistic missiles. The American side says the missiles didn't get anywhere near the aircraft carrier. This is a matter of some importance. Do you have any further and better particulars on that?
I don't have any details about this particular case, but every time a drone or a missile is shot at by the American aircraft carrier or the accompanying ships, they spend literally 10 to 15 times more than the Iranians do, because the drone and missile are cheap and inexpensive for Iran, but for the Americans it's extraordinarily expensive. So even if it doesn't hit, the taxpayers in the United States, their wallets do take a hit. But the Iranians, George, have been pretty impressive. Despite the murder of Ayatollah Khamenei, who was a man of culture, he was an expert in Persian literature, very well acquainted with Arabic literature, a fluent Azeri speaker. Khamenei is a city in the Azeri parts of Iran, and very knowledgeable about Azeri literature. He also spoke English. He was fluent in English, and he would read Western journals. He was an extraordinarily high religious authority, but he was also an intellectual. He was in jail 6 times under the Shah, if I remember correctly. And he went and fought the war that the West imposed and encouraged Saddam to invade Iran. He went and fought as a volunteer without training, because at the beginning of the war, the Iranian side was not prepared. So he was a war hero. He was a political prisoner. And he devised the Iranian defense capabilities in such an extraordinary way that after they murdered him, Iran, without having him as leader, has been hitting back at the Israeli regime hour after hour after hour for a day and a half now. And they've been targeting Americans and their assets in the Persian Gulf since yesterday. So in the 12-day war, it was only the Israeli regime. In this war, you have the real power behind the Zionist regime, the United States, alongside the Zionist regime. They murdered the Iranian leader along with his child, his son-in-law, and one of his grandchildren, and of course many other people. He murdered them, but his supporters, his followers, have been able to hold back the superpower. And the U.S. is taking extraordinarily bad hits in Iraq, in the Persian Gulf, and in Jordan. And of course, the Israeli regime is taking hits by the hour. And we still do not have, and we will have soon, another leader in accordance with the Constitution. But I think that just shows that this extraordinary man was not just an intellectual and a thinker and a man of literature, but he was also a strategic thinker, a person who designed a military force that has been able to hold back the evil forces of the Trump regime and the Netanyahu regime. So hopefully, although we are going to have bloody days ahead, and we just had an explosion nearby about half an hour before the show, it's going to be hard, it's going to be painful, but I'm optimistic that the Islamic Republic of Iran is going to deal the Trump regime and the Netanyahu regime a strategic defeat.
Well, what they did to Ayatollah Khamenei was obviously a crime, but I quoted Talleyrand earlier, who, when told of the murder of a political opponent of his, said, "It is a crime, but it's worse than a crime, it's a blunder." I think the earliest indications are that the martyring of Khamenei was a crime, but more importantly, a blunder. It has achieved the opposite of what must have been claimed for it by those who sought authorization for it. First of all, it has united millions of Iranians in mourning and in demand for revenge, but it's also lit a fire amongst Muslims all across the world. I have a feeling that they'll come to regret that act of political assassination, even on their own terms.
You know, George, they murdered him during the month of Ramadan as he was fasting and as he was in his office working. He was not hiding in a bunker. He was fasting and working, an 86-year-old man. And they murdered him and all sorts of people around him, including his own family. And the fact that he would not leave, the reason why he did not leave his residence and his office was that he said that ordinary people, many of them have no place to go. And since they have no place to go, I'm not budging. I'm not moving from here. And that's what caused his martyrdom. People in Iran are outraged. We already saw, and we discussed this before, that the support of ordinary people for the Islamic Republic and its institutions and the Constitution on January the 12th and February the 11th on the 47th anniversary of the revolution. Millions of people came to the streets in Tehran, especially on the anniversary of the revolution, because the West was trying to say that the crowds in January were AI. People came in larger numbers to prove that the West is lying. Yet, after his martyrdom, the anger has grown, and tonight, across Tehran, they've had ceremonies, not in one place, across the city. In fact, I don't have a very big Telegram channel. If anyone is interested, they can go there, or they can go to my Twitter account and go to my Telegram channel. I put footage of the ceremonies in different neighborhoods in Tehran. It's astounding, the crowds. And under airstrikes, the crowds wouldn't budge. And you can see it in the footage. They're being attacked, yet people are chanting on the streets that we're willing to die. They wouldn't run away. They wouldn't hide. They wouldn't go into the metro station. They stood their ground in different neighborhoods. So you're exactly correct. It's not just Iran either, as you were pointing out. It goes beyond Iran's borders. It goes beyond Muslim countries. People have been contacting me from Latin America and elsewhere, very, very upset about what happened to him. In Iraq, you have the Iraqi resistance. Now they too are more motivated than before. So the Epstein regime in Washington miscalculated in a big way, because today Iranians are much more steadfast than yesterday. They've made Ayatollah Khamenei more powerful after his martyrdom than when he was alive. And I think we're going to see the results of that in the days and weeks ahead.
Now, there are reports, they haven't been convincingly denied, and they are now repeated on multiple Israeli television channels, that Trump wants out already, and that he in fact wanted out last night on the first day of the war. And he himself, from his own mouth, has said multiple times today that he wants to talk with the Iranians. Laughably, he says it's the Iranians that want to talk with him. But having said yesterday he was going to wipe out the Iranian regime, he now wants to talk to the Iranian regime, which is a very powerful indicator that the war is not going well for him. What confidence do you have in that? And what would Iran's likely reaction be to that, given the massacres, given the martyrdom of your leader? Would you be prepared to talk now with Trump, or is this war going on?
Well, you know better than I, George. These Western regimes, they were the guarantors for the ceasefire between Lebanon and the Israeli regime. Every day the Israelis are bombing Lebanon and murdering Lebanese citizens. Trump himself was behind the fake ceasefire in Gaza and dragged all sorts of world leaders to Egypt for a monkey show. And they all went there and whitewashed his crimes. Every day, multiple Palestinians are being murdered in Gaza as we speak. And the West looks away, and the media looks away, the Western media, the Epstein media. In the case of Iran, twice already, in less than a year, we were negotiating, and as we were negotiating, they conspired to attack our country. So how can anyone in Iran trust Trump? Today, tomorrow, next year, at any time. We cannot trust the United States, let alone Trump. No one in the United States is talking about Trump's deception. No one is talking of. In fact, if you look at Western media, George, you'd think Iran started the war. You would think Iran is carrying out atrocities. You think it was the Iranians who killed 165 little girls in their elementary school somewhere in occupied Palestine. The Iranians are presented or described as some sort of aggressor. So there's really no way that the Iranians can trust Trump or the United States. And there's no doubt that it is not the Iranians who are seeking to speak to Trump. It is Trump who wants to talk. But it's not going to end so easily. The Iranians are going to make sure that the United States and the Israeli regime suffer a strategic defeat. It is going to be bloody. It is going to be painful. But the Iranians have to make sure that this does not happen again. When the United States is forced to back down, ultimately, it may not look like a victory, because in war, you know as well as I, war is a defeat for everyone. But when the Americans back down and they're forced to leave, returning is not an option. It will not happen again. So Iranians are adamant that they teach the Americans a lesson. It will come at a big price. It's not a price that I want to see paid, but there's no other option. So Iran is going to continue to hammer the Israeli regime with missiles. It's going to hammer U.S. bases in northern Iraq and in the Persian Gulf. And those assets that are outside of the bases, but they're affiliated to the regime in Washington, Iran is going to continue to do that. And the United States is not going to be able to say that we achieved a victory. So what Trump is saying already indicates that things are not going well. He thought that he would be able to murder Ayatollah Khamenei, a great figure, an extraordinary man, George. The greatest person I have seen in my lifetime. He thought that by murdering him, that he could end this, like in Venezuela. But the exact opposite has happened. And if anyone who was sane in the United States, if there are any sane people in Washington, if they had spoken to you before the attack, or me, or many other people that you and I know, they would have told them, they would have told the White House that this will not work, that this will not end well for you. It was clear as day to us. But they have this Orientalist view of Iran, this narrative of Iran, that Iran is unpopular, that it's despised, that it's falling apart, that it's collapsing. Of course, paradoxically, at the same time, they're saying it's a rising menace, it's a menace to the world. On the one hand, it's a menace to the world. On the other hand, it's about to collapse. But they, based on that assessment, they carried out the 12-day war and failed. They should have understood that this is not going to work. But that narrative is not, they're not capable of changing it. Seeing reality does not change that narrative. So they're going to do it again and again. And the only way to end this really is to impose a strategic defeat on the United States. Now, how would that look? I really don't know. But I think that this war is going to last more than a couple more days. It's going to last a while. I don't know if it's going to last a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. Hopefully it will not last too long. But I'm convinced that the Iranians are going to punish Trump and the Netanyahu regime.
Let me turn finally, though it's a big one, just about the only thing that I have ever disagreed with you about is this fatwa against nuclear weapons. As I understand it, this was a fatwa of the late Ayatollah Khamenei. It was reiterated by Ayatollah Khamenei. Now there's shortly to be a new supreme leader. To what extent is that post facto still the prevailing religious decision of Iran? Isn't there a likelihood or a case for the new power in Tehran to re-examine this question? Because as a caller from Nigeria just pointed out, just a couple of minutes before you came on, there's no prospect of North Korea being invaded or bombed. There will be no Abraham Lincoln off the coast of North Korea. There will be no invasion or attempt to regime change North Korea, precisely because they have nuclear weapons. In other words, is there any possibility that this fatwa will be null and void because of the entirely changed circumstances after this sneak attack by Trump and Netanyahu?
When I saw the poll, George, I knew you were going to ask this question. It's complicated. You're absolutely correct. This is basically an extension of a similar fatwa of Imam Khamenei about chemical weapons. And it's really interesting, George. I was listening to some of these Western analysts, and they don't even know that there's a Khomeini and there's a Khamenei. They think it's the same person. That's how ignorant these senators are. They don't know this is a different person and these people want to rule the world. So his fatwa is based upon this principle, this moral principle. But there's also a strategic reason as well, and that is that, and we discussed this before, I know you know it, that if Iran develops a nuclear weapon for whatever reason, then there will be an incentive for these despots in the Emirates and in Bahrain and in Kuwait and others to go and purchase their own nuclear weapons. And these regimes are not inherently stable, and that could have its own major complications. That is a reason too. But as I said before, I think privately, again, you know this, I'm just saying it for the audience. Actually, the current chair of the Supreme National Security Council, before he was the chair, he was the advisor to the leader, but now he's moved up. He said back then, when he was just an advisor to the leader, that if Iran faces an existential threat, then its nuclear posture would change. Another advisor to the leader, Dr. Kharozi, who was Mr. Khatami's foreign minister for 8 years, he too said that if there's an existential threat made against Iran, then Iran would change its nuclear posture. Now, the interpretation of that is, I think, pretty clear, but what constitutes an existential threat, that's open to debate. But one final point, and that is that it's interesting that Trump himself has pushed Iran to advance its nuclear technology, because under the nuclear deal in 2015, Iran was restricted in developing its nuclear program. And after Trump tore up the deal, the Iranians went back and began, within the framework of international law and under the supervision of the International Atomic Energy Agency, they began to expand their program both technologically, but also the infrastructure as well. But in addition to that, not only due to Trump did Iran advance its peaceful nuclear program, but also because of the wars carried out by Trump, the threats carried out by Trump, stated by Trump. Before this recent war, there was a poll which indicated that unlike before Trump, where a majority of Iranians said we do not want a nuclear weapon, and that was to a large degree influenced by official policy, most Iranians after the 12-day war said we should have nuclear weapons, despite the fact that the state says the opposite. So Ayatollah Khamenei, may he be sitting alongside Jesus and Moses and Prophet Muhammad, he was of the minority view, thanks to Trump. So this monster, this Epstein regime representative, he pushed Iran to develop its peaceful nuclear program. He pushed Iranian public opinion to take a stance that was more close, which is in alignment with what you believe than what the leader believed.
What price will our audience be paying for their petrol on Monday, Professor?
That's a good question, George. You know that the Iranians have advised ships not to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. And within the next few hours, I think we'll be seeing oil prices rise. Although I'm sure that Western media and Western analysts and people of influence will try to keep the price down, say that they're going to open up the reserves, but the reality is that we're heading for a crisis. And if the Strait of Hormuz remains closed for every day that it remains closed, it's going to get worse. But there's something even more dangerous, George. If this war expands, the Strait of Hormuz would be the smallest of the problems. Because if, let's say, there's a ceasefire in a week or 2 weeks, or a halt in hostilities, these ships can pass through, and they will reach their destinations with delays, and it will cause a lot of trouble economically. That's already happening, and each day makes it worse. But if there is an escalation, those tankers will be destroyed. Already 3 have been hit today, 3 that tried to go through without permission. Those tankers will be destroyed. The oil and gas installations will be destroyed. If that happens, and then there is a ceasefire, and the Strait of Hormuz is open, where is the oil? Where is the gas? And where are the tankers to take this non-existent oil to the markets? So Trump and Netanyahu are playing with fire. Netanyahu is more than willing to sacrifice the world, and Trump is more than willing to sacrifice the interests of the American people for Netanyahu. That's the reality that we're living with. The Iranians don't want a crisis. They didn't want this war. And as we speak, the Iranians are managing the war. They're slowly increasing the pressure on the US and the Israeli regime. Gradually, you see the strikes that are being carried out every day. The Iranians can go far faster and far further than this. Most of the Iranian underground bases, George, have not been touched. Most of the missiles and drones that have been used so far are first-generation missiles and drones that were made well over a decade ago, a decade and a half ago. So Iran is limiting, of course, Iran also wants to empty their air defenses. But Iran is managing this because it does not want to bring down the global economy. But the Trump regime, the Epstein regime, and Netanyahu may actually bring us to that point.
Professor, please accept our condolences upon the death of Iran's leader and his family and his colleagues who were murdered with him. Please accept our sincere condolences to all the innocent civilian people who have perished as a result of this savage attack by the so-called civilized West. And perhaps I speak for everyone, and not just the viewers of this show, when I express my hope and prayer, actually, that you personally remain safe and still able to talk to us on the regular basis. I'm sure we'll be talking again, God willing, soon. Professor Marandi, thanks for joining us on the Mother of All Talk Shows. Professor Seyed Marandi, Professor of English Literature and Orientalism at the University of Tehran. Now, let me tell you, there's a record audience tonight, as you might have expected from the scale of the poll, which is now at 55,000 people have voted. It's a record audience. And that's on top of several record audiences. If I tell you that on Facebook alone, this week alone, I have 25 million views, you'll get some kind of understanding of the scale of the Mother of All Talk Shows now. The scale that is of the audience, but not the scale of the resource that we have to put into the show. A man called Gus in the Netherlands wrote to me a couple of weeks ago to say my makeup artist was letting me down, that she, had to be a she according to him, had made such a mess of my makeup that I needed to sack her and get a new one. Gus, I don't have a makeup artist, neither male or female. I don't have any makeup. The idea that we are a big operation with makeup ladies and all the other paraphernalia of our so-called rivals in the mainstream media is, I'm afraid, completely fatuous. In fact, when Gayatri is not by my side, I don't even brush my jacket properly, and the dust is picked up on the 4K cameras. But the only way we can keep going is you. You need to help us. You need to make a donation if we're going to be able to keep 2 shows a week running. Now, here are tonight's top donors. A very sincere thanks to Henry Watson, Tim Moore, Anita Louise, Neville Hamilton, and Shireen Krishan. They have stepped forward, and they have backed the show through moats.tv, our website. That's the best way to support us. You can also support us through patreon.com/George Galloway. But the fastest way to do it is at moats.tv. So a big thanks to all those who have donated tonight and this week, and a big thanks to you in advance, because I know after that heartfelt plea, you're going to donate at the end. Now, if you're trying to call the show, bear with us. The switchboard, womaned by my grandson and his fiancée. How's that for a mom and pop operation? It is melting. We are answering as many of your calls as we can, but all the lines have been full since the show began. Keep trying if you can't get through. Now, a quick break, because I'm 13 minutes over time, but it's the one and only Scott Ritter coming up next. You definitely don't want to miss it. Stay tuned. My grandson, Sean, who's answering the phones tonight, had his first 1 million view tweet about Gaza, and I predict great things from him. So we're not going to go away. We believe in the next life. We believe that we will all be judged on what we did in this life, and that will determine our fate. And so we face whatever we have to face, if not with equanimity. Can't say that the experience was one that one can feel sanguine about. It was genuinely horrific, and I'll never forget it. It was the more horrific for being unexpected by me. I never believed that someone like me, of my age and with my background and with my position in British politics, would ever be told that I was being held under the Terrorism Act. I'm not unmoved by it, but I'm certainly undeterred by it.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Let's plunge right into it because there's an officer on deck. It is Scott Ritter, the famous former Marine intelligence officer and the arms inspector who became a legend for opposing the war in Iraq. He's helped us through and to understand so many conflicts since I can scarcely count them. The one and only Scott Ritter joins me now. Scott, thanks for doing this. I know you're in very great demand, so I'll just ask the obvious question. It looks to me like the war isn't going well for the invaders. How does it look to you?
Well, being able to look at this conflict now as it's entering, it soon to enter its third day, I can make the following assessment. This is a regime change conflict that the United States and Israel lost when they fired the first 6 missiles into Tehran, striking the residence of Ali Khamenei and killing the supreme leader of Iran, the second most important man in the Shia faith in the entire world after Grand Ayatollah Sistani in Najaf, Iraq. Donald Trump, when he announced this operation to the American people, said that basically our pummeling of Iran was designed to terminate the regime, decapitate the regime, suppress the regime, and create the opportunity for the Iranian people to rise up and take matters into their own hands. Today, the Iranian people are rising up and taking matters into their own hands. The streets are filled not with crowds shouting death to Khamenei, but crowds extolling the newest martyr, a man who gave his life in the service of his country and service of his faith. We have lost this war, the we being the United States, we being the United States and its controlling masters in Tel Aviv, Israel. The war is lost. The regime will not be toppled. The regime will not be changed. And the Iranians will resist long after the United States and Israel have depleted and spent their forces, run out of ammunition, and will be compelled to sue for peace.
So is Donald Trump a fool or a knave?
I prefer to use the term developed by the American punk rock group Green Day. He's an idiot. He's an American idiot. One of the dumbest people that have walked the face of the earth. A man who makes no effort to learn anything about what he's about to do. A man whose intellect is as shallow as the dust on my desktop. He is a man who postures as an American patriot, but he's an Israeli stooge. This is a man who has been briefed by his intelligence services that there is no nuclear weapons program in Iran. This is a man who is briefed by his generals and admirals that we lack the ability to finish the mission he wants us to accomplish. And this is a man who listened to Benjamin Netanyahu and launched this war of aggression, this illegal war of aggression that has as an enhancement, if we ever bring him to trial, the fact that it was done under perfidy, meaning once again the United States lied to Iran and the world, leading people to believe that there was a potential of a negotiated settlement, one where Iran actually has negotiated a deal which, had it been manifested, would have been the deal Donald Trump claimed he was looking for, the best deal in the world, a deal that removed sunset clauses, removed any possibility of Iran ever expanding its program, a deal that forever ended any speculation about Iran's intent regarding nuclear weapons. This was the deal of a lifetime, but Donald Trump wasn't interested in a deal. He and Benjamin Netanyahu had already picked the timing of this attack prior to the negotiations even beginning. Perfidy. That is what Donald Trump has committed, in addition to carrying out this war of choice, this illegal war of aggression that will forever cement him, and tragically, and I say that with anger in my voice, my country as a nation that will go down in the pages of history alongside Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan as criminal nations that have carried out horrific wars of aggression.
You and I would be expected to oppose this war, but it doesn't seem to have many friends outside of the viewpoint of people like you and I. Even the Financial Times has denounced it. And trust me, that's going some. The British government didn't allow the US to use their bases. They were forced to say, slightly mitigated now by Keir Starmer telling us that our aircraft were in the air. Turns out it was a singular aircraft, and it was in defense of Qatar, and it returned safely to base. So we're just bit players, but we are bit players that refuse to endorse this illegal act. I'm struggling to find any but the most base serfs of US power, like the Japanese Prime Minister, for example, who believe this was a good idea. Even the people that are backing it can't imagine it was a good idea.
Soon the chickens shall come home to roost, as we say. Right now the Strait of Hormuz is shut. When we finish with this program, I'm taking my car to the gas pump, and I'm going to enjoy the last gas pumped at $3.28 a gallon that I will see for some time now. Starting tomorrow, we're going to see the price of gasoline go through the roof, and it will continue to rise as this conflict drags on. Donald Trump, after telling the world how this was going to be a conflict that America was going to sustain for, weeks if necessary, is already talking about negotiations to bring this to. And in typical Trump fashion, he lies, saying that the Iranians have reached out to him. Ali Lajarni is not going to reach out to Donald Trump. Donald Trump attempted to reach out to the Iranians through an Italian proxy and was told to pound sand. Iran is in this for the duration. This is an existential struggle of survival for the Islamic Republic, for the people of Iran. They will not allow this conflict to end in any way that allows Israel and the United States to maintain forces sufficient to reattack Iran down the road. They are seeking the strategic defeat of Israel, the strategic defeat of the United States. You see this with the posture that they have made with the Gulf Arab nations, who have been pounded mercilessly and will continue to be pounded as long as they provide safe haven for the cancer that has infected the Middle East, and that cancer is the presence of the United States. Iran is now the chief oncologist, and they are laying out some very, very harsh chemotherapy to destroy the American cancer. And we're starting to see nations respond. The United Arab Emirates, in response to the Iranian attacks, has called for the removal of forces from the region that are destabilizing. Now, you can't remove Iran because it is the region. So they're talking about now the United States leaving the Middle East. And when this war is done, the United States will have no choice but to leave the Middle East with our tail tucked firmly between our dog legs.
Now, I was only a boy soldier. You were an important military officer, and nobody in the world knows more about war and military matters than you. So give us a reading on how well the Iranian response is going. It looks to me, although I may be an ingenue, that they're actually doing extremely well.
Again, lacking specific data on the exact targets hit and on the number of missiles launched. I don't have access to the Iranian battle plan. But what we can see suggests exactly that which you have said, that the Iranians are doing extraordinarily well. We have to be careful about evaluating missile launches and missile intercepts. We see data coming out of Qatar that suggests they've been very successful. But once again, we don't understand the Iranian way of war, because most of the missiles Iran has launched are designed to be intercepted. Most of the missiles Iran's launched are designed to absorb interceptors. Most of the missiles Iran launches are designed to confuse the radar systems of the integrated anti-ballistic missile defense systems. And then Iran comes in with the killer touch at the end and hits the targets they want to hit. So if we evaluate Iran on the totality of the missiles launched, we would say they have about a 33% success rate. If we evaluate them on the missiles that need to hit the targets Iran wants them to hit, the success rate is close to 100%. And these targets are devastating in terms of what they're hitting. They're destroying American radar systems worth hundreds of millions of dollars, in one case, $1.1 billion. By the time they're finished with the United States, the price tag on infrastructure lost will be over $100 billion. $100 billion of American infrastructure that will be destroyed in the Middle East. And the price tag for the Gulf Arab states can go up as equally high if they want to continue this nonsense and pretend that the United States has some sort of legitimate function in the Middle East today. The United States does not. Israel is also paying a very heavy price. One has to be careful about reading what one reads on the internet, because the quality control filter isn't necessarily there. But it appears that the Iranians struck a building, and that building contained Israeli officers who were carrying out a conference about this war. The location of that building had been selected by the Israelis in the morning, meaning that by striking this building and killing the people inside, Iran not only proved that they had the capability to penetrate Israeli air defense at any time. This building was selected because it was supposed to be ringed by sufficient air defense systems. But Iran also showed that they have the ability to collect intelligence information, highly accurate intelligence information about the most sensitive topics in Israel, and respond in a timely fashion, killing the Israelis involved. This, more than anything, scares the Israelis, because they now know they are all literally dead men walking. We might as well get Tom Hanks to go into Tel Aviv and walk down the street and shout it out. Dead man walking, because that is Israel today. The Iranians will not let up. The Iranians have the capacity to sustain this fight. Benjamin Netanyahu warned Donald Trump that if you're going to pull the trigger on Iran, you have to kill Iran, terminate the conflict before 700 missiles impact on Israeli soil. Too bad, so sad, Bibi baby, because you're going to get burned. The Iranians are coming in with everything they have, and there's not a damn thing you can do to stop it.
Scott, sometimes our children ask the most blindingly obvious but most profound question. So let me pass my eldest son's question on to you. Once I told him how I thought the war was going, he asked the pretty obvious question, why then did they do it? Why did the United States and Israel launch a war which you say they were bound to lose? And looking at the pictures so far, it seems you were right. They are losing it.
The reason why we launched this war is because of the ignorance of the people who planned this war, ignorance about war itself. Understand there's outside of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, there's very few people surrounding Donald Trump who actually have firsthand experience in war or the art of war. These are politicized dilettantes. The closest one you get is Pete Hegseth, who is nothing more than a glorified battalion operations officer and a reformed alcoholic who is probably best left sitting behind a Fox studio camera than actually trying to lead people. But hey, he can bench 315 pounds, so God bless him. But these are the people advising the president. They are simplistic people. They are foolish people. They are stupid people, fundamentally stupid people, and they are ignorant beyond belief. They have fallen victims of their own ignorance. These are people, Scott Bessent, setting off demonstrations by collapsing the value of the real back in December 28th. And then bragging about it at Davos, how he is the one responsible for creating demonstrations. Then the demonstrations get magnified by Mossad, by the CIA, by selective videotaping of violence and then projecting it out here to the echo chamber that is the American social media environment. And we started believing that there's actually a critical mass of Iranian people in Iran ready to rise up and remove the theocracy from power, because we created a situation where a handful of people unveiled the flag of the monarchy, shouted death to Khamenei, and then we broadcasted here and we said, they're ready, and Trump believes this nonsense. So he was told, if you decapitate the regime, you bring down Khamenei, the people will rise up. He actually believed this. And then he bragged about it. Openly bragged about how I am tracking Khamenei. He should leave the country because I'm going to kill him. Does he not understand that Ali Khamenei volunteered to die on the first day of the war? Ali Khamenei was at home in his residence, knowing he was being hunted down by the United States, knowing he was being targeted by death. He was surrounded by fellow shaheeds who also knew that they were going to die, but they also understood that there was a purpose in their death, because by dying, they entered into martyrdom. And the Iranian people are in the streets, but they're not shouting death to Khamenei. They're shouting long live the martyr Khamenei. That's why we lost the war on day one. This was a trap set by the Iranians on day one by a people of faith. Donald Trump wouldn't even know what a Shia is or what a Twelver is. He doesn't know who Hussein is. He doesn't know who Ali is. He has no clue what the Battle of Karbala is. And yet he fell into a trap where all of this is relevant. He assassinated or facilitated the murder of the second most important man in the Shia faith, Ali Khamenei. This is the equivalent of killing the Pope if you're Catholic, killing the Archbishop of Canterbury if you're British, killing the head of the Orthodox Church, Kirill, if you are Russian. And Donald Trump doesn't understand this. If the purpose of this operation was to get the Iranian people in the street, Donald Trump succeeded. But he got the wrong people in the street for the wrong cause. The people of Iran today are rallying in support of the Islamic Republic. The Islamic Republic is invincible at this moment because you can't kill people who are ready to die for their cause. And the Shia of Iran who are defending the Islamic Republic are prepared to a man, to a woman, to become martyrs in the cause of their faith. And it is the Islamic Republic of Iran that they are defending, not just their land, not just their culture, not just their history, but their faith. Donald Trump lost this war, the first missiles that impacted the ground in Tehran.
It is funny because American politicians in particular are forever telling us how religious they are. But your friend and mine, Professor Marandi, said to me just a few minutes ago that he prays that Ali Khamenei is right now sitting with Jesus and Moses and the Prophet Muhammad. That's what they believe. And how would it be an inhibiting thing? How would it be a frightening thing to threaten people with a martyrdom which they believe will take them to the holy families, that will take them to paradise? I just wonder, do American politicians who are, as I say, wearing their so-called Christianity on their sleeve, do they not understand the concept of heaven?
Well, American politicians who proclaim themselves as Christians, I'm sure there's some out there who are truly Christian, and but to be a Christian means you study Christ, which means you study the teachings of Jesus, study the life of Jesus. And I can't find anything in the life of Jesus that could possibly be used to promote the ongoing conflict with Iran. I often ask myself, as somebody who struggles with the concept of Christianity, because I like Jesus. I read the Bible. I think Jesus was a cool dude. I think he stood for some really neat stuff: peace, love, love thy neighbor, etc. I struggle with Christ because I'm not a big fan of Paul having a vision in the desert. But other than that, I'm working on it. But I often ask myself, okay, forget Christ, because Christ is, to me, a manufacturer of man. What would Jesus do? And Jesus wouldn't tolerate this war on Iran at all. Jesus would be seeking to live in peace and harmony with people. And so if you're a Christian, understand that if you're a Christian out there promoting this conflict, you're not a Christian at all. You're somebody who's perverted your own religion. But then again, you're probably somebody who buys into the concept of Christian Zionism, which is in itself a self-contradictory concept, because you're making alliance with the very people who not only killed your Lord and Savior, but today view you as goyim, view you as secondary citizens. You are selling yourself out to people who don't view you as friends and allies, but people who spit on you, literally spit on you as an inferior race. And worse of all, because again, I am not a man of faith, and so I don't put religion above all else. Worst of all, you've betrayed that which I do put above all else: the Constitution of the United States, the rule of law, what it means to be an American. Your behavior is an embarrassment to real Americans who embrace values that don't call for illegal wars of aggression against nations that have done nothing to harm you. In fact, nations that have bent over backwards to give you the best deal possible to achieve the results you deemed essential, preventing Iran from having a nuclear weapon. Yes, okay, that's a noble goal. I don't think Iran was ever seeking to have a nuclear weapon, but here we are. We could have achieved that goal. And yet these Christian Americans have thrown that away in the cause of death and destruction. The moment a Christian starts embracing death and destruction is the moment the four horsemen of the apocalypse need to be unleashed on the earth and carry them straight to hell.
With your erudition, you'll no doubt agree with me that Catch-22 was one of the greatest novels of the 20th century. In Catch-22, Milo Minderbender rents out his own air force to the enemy, in that case to the Germans. Hasn't something like that happened? The American Air Force has been rented out and to Miriam Adelson, and if she got that for 250 million, that's the bargain of the century, isn't it? The American armed forces have essentially been rented out to Adelson and her boss Netanyahu.
No, you're 100% correct, and this may be the downfall of Donald Trump, and I pray it is the downfall of Donald Trump. I may actually become a religious man if it result. Regime change cuts two ways. It's a double-edged sword. Donald Trump has unsheathed the regime change sword and sought to weld it against Iran, but in doing so, he's created the foundation of his own demise. You see, he did run on a platform where he was the president of peace. There is posters out there that make this proclamation. He promised Americans that he would put America first, that he would make America great again. Tucker Carlson had a very fascinating interview with Mike Huckabee, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, where Mike Huckabee openly on international TV said that Greater Israel is a thing, and that it's okay for the Israelis to aspire to take the territory of virtually all of their Arab neighbors. He truly believes this. Ted Cruz believes this. Donald Trump believes this. Others, but the American people don't believe this, because the American people aren't willing to die for this. And when Tucker Carlson released this, the Israeli press, I was reading it, they got very worried. They said, we being Israel, need to be very careful here, because there is now a serious divide amongst those people we need in the United States to maintain this friendship, the Republican base, the MAGA base, and we're going to lose them. with Mike Huckabee's words and others, because they fear that Israel is being put ahead of America. Well, as you said, when Miriam Adelson buys the United States Air Force, the United States Navy, and allows it to be put in harm's way by attacking Iran, who pose no threat whatsoever to the American people or the American nation, this proves that Donald Trump is an Israeli first president. Make Israel great again is his calling card. And when we lose this war, and George, I'm here to tell you, we have lost this war. This is going to be one of the most humiliating moments in American history, when we have to admit we have run out of ammunition and we cannot sustain this fight while Iran continues to pummel Israel, American bases, and American regional allies. Donald Trump will now be compelled to once again lie to the American people about, how he achieved something, but now he's going to withdraw. And he is going to be crushed at the polls at midterms. And when he gets crushed, it's not just that he will lose the House, because he will lose the House. And by losing the House, it means he will be impeached. He will be impeached nonstop. There might be multiple impeachment trials going on. This is how much the Democrats despise this man. But he may lose the Senate, and he may lose the Senate in sufficient numbers that could lead to conviction. This is the end of Donald Trump's political legacy, and he saw it. You saw his posture when he gave his speech announcing the beginning of this operation. Donald Trump during the election. I mean, he was running around like the Energizer Bunny. I mean, that man could put in a 14-hour day, travel to 5 different places, finish up with a rally at night, and he was as strong as the day is long. I mean, he's out there doing his stupid YMCA dance. His voice is strong, powerful. Here he goes before the American people announcing this war, which should be the most testosterone-laden event in his life, and he sounded like a defeated man. He sounded like a guy who had just spent $50 on a hooker and couldn't get it up. I apologize for that, but I just don't like Donald Trump, so I'm going to say that. He was a defeated man. He knows he lost. He knows it's over. He knows it's finished, because we're not going to win. And it's gradually becoming apparent that Israel lied to him. Israel deceived him. Benjamin Netanyahu used and abused him, and that Miriam Adelson bought him. Donald Trump is the equivalent of a $50 whore who sold America out to a pimp named Miriam Adelson.
Brilliantly eloquent, as always. Scott Ritter, thanks for joining us on the mother of all talk shows. Well, how about that interview? I was blown away by it. I suspect many of you were. Let's take a call from Malaysia, where it's very early in the morning. Sukri in Malaysia on Iran. Hey, we are the global university of the airwaves. Sukri, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Josh. I would like to inquire about this. Looking at how things going in the Middle East, is it possible that regime change is going to happen, but not in Iran, but instead in places like Bahrain or Jordan, and a lot of discontent people in the Middle East, and particularly those who having a significant amount of Shiite people?
Well, I believe so. Bahrain is the most obvious one. Bahrain is an overwhelmingly Shiite country ruled by a puppet monarch who owes everything to Saudi Arabia across the causeway and the United States and the British, who both have naval bases there. If these factors were not present, the absolute monarch of Bahrain would have been overthrown many decades ago. But he might still be overthrown because what's happening right now in this war is imperiling all of these family businesses that run these Arab countries in the Gulf. So I would have thought the life expectancy, politically speaking, of the rulers of Bahrain must be highly suspect. But they're not the only one. There are more important countries in the Gulf that manifestly have been placed in an impossible position by their rulers. And moreover, those rulers have big families of people who might very well be preparing to use this disaster that their brother has led them into to knock them out, to take over. I don't want to go into names and places for diplomatic reasons. It's a very sensitive time, but there are plenty of precedents for brothers overthrowing brothers and coming to power because their brother led the country into ruin. And there are obvious countries in the Persian Gulf where that could be said. I was actually sitting with the emir of one of those countries on the day that his son overthrew him. Imagine that. I was sitting with the father, having tea in Claridge's, literally, when someone came over and whispered in his ear that there had been a coup and his son had taken over. And we both repaired to the embassy of that country, where the bad news was broken to him by the ambassador. A large check was written just to keep him in good terms, keep his credit line open in Claridge's and wherever else he shopped. But he was overthrown. The father was overthrown by the son. And there have been other countries, again, who shall be nameless for the moment, where the brother has overthrown his brother, but he has another brother who might be getting ready to overthrow him. And the truth is, these dysfunctional family businesses have made a disastrous misjudgment. Some of them more disastrous than the other. But if you fill your country with American bases and you allow Israel free run of your country, running security in your airport, if you have literally Israeli businessmen running around in your country when you have or you haven't officially normalized, you have to know that you have taken a terrible risk. And that risk now looks a very bad risk indeed. Now looks like a misjudgment of gargantuan scale and is existential in nature. There are countries in the Gulf who have been destroyed by this policy. They've been destroyed in less than 48 hours. Think about it. There are countries whose economy is now defunct, where there will never be glad, confident morning again, because nobody wants to buy a multi-million-dollar apartment when there's every chance that a missile might come through the window. Nobody wants to invest in or frolic in a country that might very well be at war at the drop of a hat. You know who I'm talking about. So, regime change in the Persian Gulf? Yes, there will be. But it won't be the Islamic Republic of Iran. Thank you, Sukri, for that. A quick break. Then it's your calls, right up to Gayatri, who's back and joining me at the end of the show. Stay tuned. I think you don't have to worry about these things with Mamdani, because my overwhelming feeling is that Mamdani is a phony. He has as much intention of doing these things as, I compare him to a figure in British Labour history who became briefly famous in the US when Joe Biden was found to have plagiarized him during a presidential run some decades ago. But that man's name was Neil Kinnock. He used to talk all this flowery, far left guff like Mamdani does, but he had no intention whatsoever of actually doing anything about it, of doing any of it. So there's no chance whatsoever that Mamdani is going to defund the New York Police Department.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Well, let me close the poll. Let me quit while I'm ahead. 60,000 people have voted in our poll this evening. Should Israel open its nuclear weapons to international inspections? Yes, 98, 86, 94, 92, and 0. The 86 is on X. That means that 14% of the people that voted on X do not think that Israel should open its nuclear weapons to international inspectors. They're accepting that Israel has illegally acquired and undeclared nuclear weapons and stating that they should not be internationally accepted. You make up your mind about the logic of that. Now, big news on the podcast. We are in the top 10 for politics in Kuwait, Senegal, Egypt, and Serbia this week, and in the top 20 for politics in Ghana, Lebanon, and Malaysia. You can listen anytime, of course, to our podcast. Just scan the QR code now. Zainab is in Canada and wants to talk about Iran, and she's very welcome. Zainab, what would you like to say?
George, how are you? It hit very hard, Khamenei's martyrdom, but, coming to terms with the fact that he was an old man and God wanted martyrdom for him, so he was called that way, but it has hit emotionally very hard, although originally I'm from Pakistan. My question is, when I look at these events, I wonder sometimes, what do you think? Is it more politically driven? Or is it more religiously driven, where they are at war with the Islamic ideology, which focuses more on the hereafter versus material desires, and that creates a certain threat in them? And if it is religious in nature, or what are we up against? If you look at what's coming out of the Epstein files, they're certainly not about Christianity or Judaism versus Islam. They are going something above. Maybe they're worshipping a force, Satan, devil, whatever you want to say, that is completely basically at odds with the concept of God. It creates a lot of confusion in my mind. If you can shed some light as to what do you think?
Yes, I will, not everyone will agree with me, but I believe there's nothing religious about it at all. I don't believe that Donald Trump knows what a Shiite is. I think he knows what a Sunni is. I don't think he knows anything about Islam. I don't think he knows anything about Christianity. From everything I've learned about his life, he led a life of extreme hedonism. There is no sin that he has not committed. There is no commandment that he has not regularly broken. There is no wife that he hasn't cheated on. Indeed, there's a mystery about his previous wife. There's absolutely no reason to believe that Donald Trump believes in God at all. He has deployed, weaponized, the evangelical fools who support him, who lay on hands upon his person, who speak in tongues to him and in his presence. But I think he laughs out loud when he gets back indoors after such events. I don't believe that the Shah of Persia was a Shia. and they loved him. The Ayatollah Khamenei was a Shia, and they hated him. It's not about the religion. It's about the refusal of Iran to abandon the Palestinians, as so many other regimes in the region have done. That's their real beef with the Iranians. Not their religion or their sect, but that they have never abandoned Palestine, that they continue to do what they can to come to the aid of the Palestinians in need. Now, you could argue that they should have done more, should have done less. But what you can't argue is that they are the only Muslim state that has meaningfully in any way assisted the Palestinians in their calvary. The other Arab Muslim countries, and not just the Arab Muslim countries, have effectively abandoned the Palestinian cause, but the Iranians never have. And that's the beef not only that Israel has with them, that the US has with them, but that the other Arab states who have done nothing, and nothing but abandon, and sometimes positively harmed the Palestinian people by joining with Israel in their oppression and assisting Israel to oppress them. That's their beef with Iran also. Iran shows them up. Iran makes them feel ashamed. And moreover, their people know it, and their people may one day act upon it. Zainab in Canada, thank you very much. Now, there's reports of greatly increased traffic to the mother of all talk shows tonight, the TV website, moats.tv. But thanks if you've already donated. A big shout out to this evening's leading supporters: Christian G. Suklu, Roger Boniface, Thierry Laurent, M.N. Beg, and George Swan. If you want to stand with them, go to moats.tv now and click the Donate Now button. Let's go to London, where Aisha also wants to talk about Iran. Aisha, welcome.
Hi, I'm just calling in regards to the war. So I just want to know what kind of impact will this have on Western countries like America and the UK, for example, with maybe the oil prices going up and the fuel prices, so people having to fill up their cars with petrol and diesel and things like this, and what other impacts it could have on these countries with maybe refugees coming from Iran and moving over to or moving over to European countries, or
well, it's
even
very funny.
coming.
It's very funny, Aisha, because the people who hate refugees the most, who complain about refugees, which they mean immigrants, which they mean people of color, which usually they mean Muslims, they're the biggest supporters of the war. Nigel Farage, for example, is the biggest supporter of the war. In the United States, the people who created ICE are busily creating a new wave of refugees coming from this Iranian conflict and from the other countries where the war is now impacting. So, I mean, in Pakistan today, United States Marines murdered 10 Pakistanis who were protesting outside the consulate in Karachi, I believe. So this is going to create a big backwash of refugee traffic created by the United States for all the far-right politicians then to complain about, even though they are supporting the war. But the economic impact will be great. Of course, depends how long it goes on. If Donald Trump pulls stumps tomorrow and pretends that Iran have asked him for a ceasefire, then the impact will be less. But the impact already, there's 500 oil tankers backed up, unable to proceed through the Straits of Hormuz. The resistance in Yemen, Ansar Allah, have closed the Red Sea, so no Suez Canal traffic. So if nothing is going through the Red Sea, through the Suez Canal, nothing is going through the Straits of Hormuz, as the Americans say, do the math. The economic impact will be extreme. And if the conflict were to continue, and if Iran were to begin to destroy the oil and gas installations in the neighboring countries, then the impact would be unimaginable. No oil, no gas, no transportation through the Red Sea, through the Suez Canal, or through the Persian Gulf. Basically, our economies will grind to a halt, and the price of petrol will be the least of your worries. In fact, you won't need to fill up your car because there will be nowhere to go, because nothing will be open, because everything, including your workplace, will have closed. So many comments tonight. Here are only a few from YouTube. Empire We Are 01 sends $10. Thank you very much. In the 90s, the US provided 25 F-15s to Israel, built to carry and deploy US B-61 nuclear weapons. Iran is crazy for not acquiring a nuclear deterrent decades ago. Tina Ballerina 3 says, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what your country can do for Israel. Donald Trump. And Ant from Ohio sends $20. Thanks, Ant. Says, if we're lucky, then the meatheads at Fox News tell us that Trump saved the day. Aladdin is in Canada on Iran. Aladdin, welcome.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, you're on the air.
Yes, George, thank you for having me. First and foremost, I'd like to thank you for consistently standing on what many believe to be the right side of history from the struggles against apathy, South Africa, and the ongoing Palestine cause. Your voice has been for many a breath of fresh air and source of hope during deeply challenging times. Now, I also wish to emphasize, George, the importance of unity within our ummah. Now more than ever, standing together against oppression and resisting division is essential. Recent events have left many feeling that key leaders within the Muslim world have been systematically targeted and weakened. For some, these moments evoke historical parallels, including reflection on Karbala and the lessons it represents about sacrifice, justice, and steadfastness. Finally, George, I would like to raise a sincere question regarding segments of the Iranian diaspora who have been seen publicly celebrating while waving the Israeli flag. This has caused confusion and concern among many observers, and it raises complex questions about identity, political perspective, and differing views within diaspora communities. Also, one last thing, I don't understand how Donald Trump and Epstein Island guest list VIP is the moral standard of the world now. Thank you, George.
Well, unfortunately, it is, and not just in the United States. The tentacles of Epstein are everywhere. He was a very much more important guy than we previously thought. This is not just a sex scandal, though it would be a gigantic one. This is a matter of espionage and of state penetration and state capture. I mean, I saw a copy of Jeffrey Epstein's Saudi passport. He had a Saudi passport, and not in his own name, in a fake name. And of course, there are pictures of him with important Saudi personalities, and he was deeply involved with the owner of the port in Abu Dhabi. He had in his house a cloth from the Kaaba itself sent to him from Saudi Arabia. And God knows what hideous sins he committed in the presence of, or even on that cloth. I daren't think about it. So the truth is that Donald Trump and Netanyahu are working on the satanic side of history and of contemporary events. There's no doubt about that. And many, many Muslim leaders have collaborated with them, were metaphorically or literally in bed with him. So the Epstein affair, that's why I called it the Operation Jeffrey Epstein. That's why I called it the Epstein War, because I'm in no doubt whatsoever that Donald Trump is doing this to try to distract the American public from the avalanche of hideous revelations about his confederates and indeed about himself. As we might well find in the next 24 hours, the net is closing in on Donald Trump. So there are many complex drivers of this ghastly sneak attack, but they are failing. I agree with you about unity. My feeling is that whatever certain national leaders do or don't do, the vast majority of the Muslim community, the Muslim Ummah, are completely opposed to Israel, and most are completely opposed to the United States of America. And it must never be thought that the leaders of certain Muslim countries are representative of the masses. They simply are not. Aladdin in Canada, big thanks. Big news on the podcast. We are now top 10 for politics. I've already read that. Now, at 9 p.m. on Thursday, Call the Doctor returns with episode 16. This is a great thing we're doing. You can't get through to your own doctor, and even if you get through, you've got no chance whatsoever of getting an appointment. So we've provided you with a doctor, Dr. Bob Gill, who is a legendary campaigner for the National Health Service. 9 p.m. this Tuesday, Call the Doctor returns with episode 16. It will be streaming on YouTube and Rumble at 9 p.m. Now, she's just disappeared from my computer, but I'm hoping she hasn't disappeared from our screen. Let me reintroduce, after a brief absence, much missed, my missus. Here's Gayatri. What's rattling, Gayatri?
So as the Americans started their full-on war against Iran, they launched an airstrike onto an elementary school in Iran, a girls' school, murdering 156 schoolgirls. Girls the ages and the sizes of our daughters. And 156 girls, their lives were cut short from becoming grown-up women. The women that these Western forces claim to support. So where are these feminists? Where are these token dolls that shave their head in solidarity with women in Iran? These women and girls are being murdered, barbarically murdered. So where are they now? Where is this women life freedom movement? Well, ironically, I saw some of these lawmakers in the UK and in the US welcoming March as the National Women's History Month ahead of next week, Sunday, 8th of March, when it's International Women's Day. I mean, seriously, I'm sick of these so-called feminists. I can't take it anymore.
Well, they're always talking about women's rights in Iran, but they don't give a toss about the women slaughtered in Gaza. They say that they are always looking after and safeguarding the rights of children, but they didn't do anything to stop the mass slaughter of children in Gaza. So their silence doesn't surprise me, but their apparent lack of shame does surprise me. I mean, you'd think one of these celebrities that lined up to cut their hair off in solidarity with Iranian women would have had something to say about 40 Iranian women, volleyball players, being slaughtered in a gymnasium. You would think that one of them, just one of them, would have said something about the massacre of the girls as you say, the same age, the same size as our own daughters. It is so repugnant, it's difficult to muster the words to condemn it. But I'm afraid, seen all this before. In the 1980s, in politics in Britain, I was repeatedly told that we must socially engineer the Parliament to get more women into the Parliament, because there'll be less wars, there'll be more peace, there'll be more love and understanding. And then we got Margaret Thatcher. And then we got a whole series of female killers and serpents. It doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman. It doesn't matter whether you're black or white. What matters is whether you pursue good or whether you pursue evil. And both men and women can be good, and both men and women can be evil. What else have you got for us?
Indeed. Well, we are over time, but I just want to remind you and congratulate you on your 2-year anniversary of the Rochdale by-election victory. I mean, it was a true victory, one that is still spoken of across the land, and also echoes. It haunts the political class in Britain, and it echoes in all the press rooms, all the newsrooms in Britain. Obviously, especially on the back of Labour losing in Manchester, the very constituency where you stood before, and our middle daughter, was born.
Indeed, she was. In fact, she was almost called Gorton Galloway. I mean, I'm not joking. Our now editor, but then close colleague, Ron Mackay, he seriously proposed to me that we call our middle daughter Gorton Galloway, so as to help me win the Gorton constituency when I stood there. But you're right, I still live rent-free in their heads. Keir Starmer wrote a letter to his members of parliament in just a simple A4, one-page letter in which he mentions me not once, not twice, but 3 times. And I'm thousands of miles away. Yeah, I'm a spectre haunting them. The BBC politics show this morning, although virtually nobody watched it, she was Laura Kuenssberg was laying into me over Iran, of all things. You'd think they'd be embarrassed, but they are unembarrassable.
By the way,
well, look, thanks, Gayatri.
They are
see you tomorrow, God willing, or on Tuesday, rather, and we'll be back, the two of us, I hope, with the mother of all talk shows on Wednesday. It's been a marvellous show, the biggest show we've ever had, the biggest vote in the poll that we've ever had, the biggest donations that we have ever had, and the largest number of calls that we have ever had. I don't know if the war will still be running on Wednesday, but we will be here to talk about it if it is. Stay tuned and come back on Wednesday. Good night.
It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.